You are listening to Living with ADHD and CPTSD, available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Today is a CPTSD episode, and what I want to talk about is quite personal because it's amazing how frustrating CPTSD can get. And the bottom line is, do I want to continue struggling with what I have right now? Or do I want to be a meaningful and important person within society? Meaning I am capable of interacting with people without getting triggered. My trauma doesn't affect me to the point where I am incapable of being around people, having relationships, having the ability to be social in situations that require the possibility that you may need to deal with stressful situations or awkward problems that for a lot of people who deal with complex trauma from childhood related abuse and trauma, that makes it difficult, where they either freeze up or get triggered and are not capable of, being in that situation because they're not capable of handling that sort of, detailed experience. So, yeah, it's one of those things, I think about this a lot because especially in the last little while when there's been a lot of problems and you get to the point where you feel like you have no confidence in yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like it just feels like there's nothing you can do that's right, and everything that happens, no matter how hard you try, is just not good enough. And that you struggle daily to make this work. And we all know that trauma-related issues for any person who has CPTSD, no matter the level of severity that they've experienced in their past, it will always come and play a vital role in how they deal with experiences and emotions and difficult situations in their daily life. Some of us, it's extremely difficult, and it feels like no matter how much work we do in our daily routines, like therapy sessions, our processing, working with our parts, doing all the necessary work in order to start healing and becoming or getting better, it just feels like there's no end in sight. Like you can't do anything, and it always just feels like it's never helping and never working. So I get that. And there have been days for myself where this happens. And I know that it can get easier. I have had many times where I've experienced a traumatic relapse and I get triggered, right? And I'm blended with my parts and they are fighting and they're trying to, take care of me. They feel like I need to be helped or that I need to be taken care of, or they're protecting me because they're not familiar with the situation and they don't know what to do, right? Like, which is the adult sitting here going, this is very stressful. This is traumatic. I'm getting triggered. I don't know how to handle this. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting scared. I'm getting angry, right? And the adult, if you're someone who's still recently new in your work and processing, and you're in the early stages of like healing from your trauma, the adult's going to often get triggered, and your parts are more likely going to take over. Because our ultimate goal when we do get triggered, and well, depending on your situation, the ultimate goal when we are getting triggered, like I said, is to be able to step back and identify the trigger, identify the parts that are getting triggered for us, and to, reassure them that we're okay. It's just that when we're in when we're in the early stages of the process, we're going to have a difficult time with that. And so what, of course, as we all are aware, ends up happening is that our child parts take over, because their sole purpose is to try and protect the adult from any further harm. But the thing is as I've said many, many times throughout multiple episodes, and I'm sure even your therapist has, if you're seeing the therapist who is doing a good job and is identifying your trauma with child parts, the idea that the child parts are not aware, of course, that it isn't the past, that they don't realize that the present day is, as the adult's, current day and time and age. Those child parts, they come online, and their first reactions and thoughts is that it's that, again, that child or that adult is actually 6 years old or 8 years old, and they're back in that real-time situation, at least according to them, that they're getting, they're being abused, and they're experiencing trauma again. But they don't have any idea that, of course, that it isn't that 6-year-old or 8-year-old mind and body, is that it's a matter of fact that adult who's grown up and has responsibilities and can take care of themselves and is responsible for their own safety. The part that we need to work on, of course, is showing and updating that part so that they realize that the adult is okay, and that it isn't the year that they were 6 or 8, right? Like, it's reintegrating into the neurological setup in our minds for those child parts, for them to realize that I am safe, right? Like, I am okay. I'm in control of my own destiny. I'm in control of my life. That my abusers are no longer able to hurt me, and they're no longer able to damage the adult and make us re-experience trauma over and over again. That we are in fact safe. So, as I was saying, and I'm just wanting to make sure that everybody understands, an adult who's fresh and new into the processing experience is going to have a very hard time connecting with those child parts and properly updating them. What ends up happening with an adult who has very little to no experience with processing is they just get triggered, and then they become frozen, or they run away, or they get scared, and then they have their child parts take over and do the things that part would have done in the past to help protect them, right? So the adult needs to learn how to unblend. The adult needs to learn how to stay grounded, and then eventually they need to learn how to identify the parts and get to know them, and give them the respect and the acknowledgement that they deserve to get, and then update them, and then hopefully, down the road, the parts trust the adult, and the adult is able to maintain control the next time a possible trigger experience can occur or would occur. So I have had, for, like I said, a very long time now, struggles with identifying the fact that I'm triggered. See, that's the thing, is a lot of people, when they're first dealing with this whole, therapy and working with their parts, is, excuse me, is they don't necessarily realize that they are triggered, right? Like they're so new into this that they get blended so quickly, and it happens so often that understanding and identifying within themselves that they are indeed triggered, and that they're blended with their parts, and that they're already, out the door, not capable of being there and being adult. It's because they don't realize, and they don't have the understanding of the system and how it works, right? Like all they know is that something happens to them and they feel scared, and it reminds them back of their childlike years. And so they think they have no understanding, and they don't realize what is happening. As far as they're concerned, they feel like they're back at that age of 6 years, and they're experiencing the traumatic events. They're being abused again and again, and that's all that they feel, right? And the thing is, and as I've said in another episode, if the trauma is severe enough that it is so horrific and so repetitive, that person develops literally completely different personalities to the point where they literally take over, and that regular part, or sorry, that child, or that even the adult who has this, has no memories and no, like, almost as if kind of like they blacked out, you know what I mean? And then they wake up all of a sudden kind of with no memories of what had happened for the past however long, 5-10 minutes. And it's because they're dissociating to the point where it's like a completely new identity takes over. So dissociative identity disorder. And that is something that does occur with people who have extreme, severe triggers and trauma from their childhood. Is that new identity literally gets created to protect that person from the trauma. And it's a valid reason for it, right? Because that child has no ability to escape. Like, they can't run away. They can't stick up for themselves, defend against the perpetrator. They have no means of escape. So as far as they're concerned, the only way that they can escape while the abuse may be happening is to dissociate so severely. Like I said, like they get that new part or that new identity, and so they have zero memories of it at all. And that's a real severe situation, and it is extremely real. And I'm sure there are a number of you out there who are listening to my podcast that have that experience. And that's a lot of work, because the trauma is so severe. The fact that the person has to create a new identity in order to, deal with the pain and the suffering that they're experiencing, that's a ton of work. I don't really have too much knowledge and any sort of, understanding of that, because that was nothing that ever had occurred to me. But my child parts did take over, even though the adult is there, right? Like I'm learning and my understanding and my ability to recognize that there are child parts that are active and that are, taking over, and I'm getting blended with those parts is very, I'm really good at it. I have a much better understanding. I don't exactly know if you were to ask me on a scale of 1 to 10, of clearly 10 being extremely aware, I don't know if I could necessarily tell you on that scale where I'm at, because right now what I've been working on mostly is learning how to identify that I'm triggered, learning to identify that I need to, or, to understand that I need to step away, that I need to take care of myself. You have to be able to do things in a certain order in order to, fully go from step 1 to step 20, or however many steps it takes for you to get to that point where you're healing and, you can handle the situations. That's what you need to do. And sometimes some of us, and myself included, we get to situations where we may not have the steps that are required all in the correct order, like we have one moment where we're blended, we have our child parts active, and we're trying to update our parts, and we're trying to learn and trying to be the adult more. And we haven't really done much when it comes to identification, to learning about these parts, to identify who they are and what they're about. It's like a baby has to learn how to crawl before they can learn to walk, right? They can't walk without crawling. It's this natural steps in growing up, our process of evolving, I guess you could say, in a similar light. We have to be able to identify all these parts and get to know them and process with them, and before we can truly update them to the point where, in the moment that a trigger occurs, where we can go, hey guys, we're okay, yeah, something did trigger me, did trigger you guys, and the situation does appear to be scary, but guys, I'm okay. There's nothing to be worried about here. I'm in control. We're safe. We're good. You guys can relax. You feel safe. It's okay. If we don't understand our parts, and we haven't acknowledged them, and we haven't shown them through repetitive processing on a daily basis that they can trust us, how the heck are we supposed to, in the moment when you are triggered, how are you supposed to be able to get your parts to believe you and step back? Imagine imagine you've got a bunch of soldiers who are along with you, are fighting in a very serious, deadly war, okay? And you're their new leader, and you just showed up. They don't know anything about you. They don't know your experience, your training, your skills. They don't know who you are. For all you know, you could just be some fraud who found a way to get in and tricked the people that make the decisions, and you really don't know what you're doing. Those soldiers, they have to gain their trust in you. You have to gain their trust. Yeah, I know. I'm all over the place with that. You have to gain their trust. You have to show them that you are indeed capable of leading them into a dangerous situation, that you will know what to do. Imagine showing up as a brand new leader with no experience with them and asking them to just believe in you and do what you ask without showing them that you are indeed capable of doing it. You think, well, you see, okay, sure, it's the military. if they don't follow you, they're either going to get killed for sure, or they're going to get court-martialed because they didn't follow their commanding officer. But at the same time, how do you trust someone that you don't know, right? Like, it's just like if some stranger showed up in your house and said, "Hi, I'm going to just walk downstairs, and if you don't mind, I'm going to use your washroom, and then I'll leave." You're just going to tell them, "Oh, yeah, sure, no problem, go ahead." You don't have a clue about them. For all they know, that person can be some robber or thief from the streets that's coming into your house and wants to steal something. So they're going to pretend that they're going to the washroom and stuff a few things in their coat and rob you without even making an effort. If you're allowing that person to go into your house and do those things, you're very naive and really stupid. But I don't know too many people who would do that, honestly. So that's the thing, is that if you allow somebody who you don't know to in your house and let them walk around without supervision, that's ridiculous. So that's the same thing. Imagine your parts are that, your parts are the person who owns the house, and you're that stranger walking in saying, "Yeah, can I use your washroom? I want to go downstairs," blah, blah, blah. And nobody supervises them. Supervises you. Your parts aren't just going to blindly trust you without knowing you. If you don't know anything about them, how do you expect them to trust you? That's pretty silly and not a very smart thing to do. And so they have every right to be and act the way they are. So you need to understand them. You need to gain their trust. You need to show them not just once, but multiple times that you are capable of being responsible, of taking care of them, showing them what's the right thing to do in the moment when something triggering and possibly re-traumatizing occurs. You have to do those things. If you don't, well, what do you expect, right? So yes, you have to know the steps. And I have struggled off and on for a long time, recognizing the triggers, getting my parts to trust me, and then learning how to do the right thing in the moment so that I can gain their trust, that they'll understand them, that they'll understand what is going on, and that they'll feel safe in the situation and allow me as the adult to still be in control and to prevent certain things from occurring, right? Like allowing my parts to take over and be children and say things that are defensive and mean and hurtful and uneducated. And, it's a damn good thing that my girlfriend understands and realizes who I am and what's going on, because if it was some stranger or somebody I just started to get to know and I started behaving that way in front of them, if they had no idea, and they likely wouldn't, that I was dealing with CPTSD and that I was getting triggered and having my parts take over, or the adult becoming blended with these parts, there's a real good chance that person's going to just get really turned off, and they're just going to go, what is going on here? How come, why are you saying these things? That's really hurtful. That's mean. Why are you being so weird? I don't get what you're doing. There are going to be many, many situations in our lives from, at any point up for years and years, if we never do anything about our parts and work with our processing and updating, there's going to be many situations, possibly daily, that are going to come up where we're going to likely get triggered and we're going to do things or say things that are going to be misconstrued as hurtful or silly or childish or dangerous, even because we're not in control of our our child parts. We're not doing our work. We're not able to identify that we are triggered. And that is not a safe situation. Clearly, like not only for ourselves, but for the people who are around us. We need to take responsibility for our triggers. We do need to be responsible for our CPTSD, because if we do not do that, either we're going to be living our entire life in a triggered state and incapable of being an adult in situations that require adult-like behavior, or we're going to be alone. We're not going to have anyone, to help us out or to be there for us. Like, we can't honestly expect our partners, especially if, like, it's one thing if the triggers and everything have occurred years after, let's say you're married or you've been with someone for years and suddenly something occurs and now you're getting triggered and you're experiencing your childhood trauma. That's different than if you meet someone and you have CPTSD and you're not taking care of yourself. They're going to get freaked out. And first they're not going to understand, and it's going to be hard for them unless they're extremely understanding and they really, really care for you and they're extremely patient and they want to deal with what could happen. There's a good chance that that person's just not going to be able to deal with it, and you could lose them. Now, I'm not saying that that's fair. I'm not blaming us necessarily, but who's gonna, like, honestly, if you were a neurotypical person and you had no childhood trauma experiences or situations, and someone who had CPTSD, you met them and you didn't know they had it, and they're experiencing these triggers and they're getting blended and they're doing and saying things that to you are hurtful, childish, rude, and they're not telling you, or you don't understand what's going on, or they're trying to explain and they're just not handling it well, or they're not doing the work. How long are you going to stick around? There's a good chance that you're likely at some point going to go, I can't handle this anymore. I'm sorry. I realize that you're dealing with this, but this is just too much. Ultimately, it is our responsibility to handle this. We have to do what is right. We have to get out there, find a good therapist, get some help, do the work, do the processing, realizing it's going to take some time. This isn't going to be a quick fix. And then, slowly over time, updating our parts and start the healing process. And then one day we'll be capable of handling all the different triggers and situations that may cause us to feel scared, right? If we get our parts to trust the adult and the adult is safe, then we're going to be so much closer to being healed. And then we're going to be ready for life and real like time kind of situations. So yeah, ultimately it is our goal and our responsibility. So I feel, okay, to wrap this up, I feel like I have made a lot of progress. I have been a lot better at realizing situations that I get triggered. I have had a much better time dealing with my child parts. They are trusting me a lot more than they had in the past. I'm not getting blended like I used to. When I am getting triggered, I'm actually having that ability to notice it. I am still working on the verbal part of informing someone that I am triggered and that I need to step away. That's still work in progress, but it is getting better. I'm not in the situation that I was even 6 months ago, and I'm definitely a lot better than I was a couple years ago. It's a lot of work, and I am aware that it's going to take a lot of time still before I'm going to be in a situation that I'm not going to ever cause a problem, or I'm going to allow my child parts to ever take over. They are definitely trusting me, and the work has been evident, not only to myself, but to my girlfriend and to my therapist. So there is proof and there is evidence out there just for myself that I can get better, that I can do healing, and I can get my parts to trust me. It's been a long time. I know it's only like a third or maybe a quarter of the time that a lot of people tend to take in order for them to get to that step, but it's still a lot of work, and it's been extremely difficult and painful and scary for many situations. But I'm getting there, and I'm experiencing and noticing the differences, and that is a great feeling. And I'm glad that I am there. It's so much better. It's better than it was, and I am grateful for the effort. And I'm so forever grateful for the patience and understanding and the multiple chances that I've been given by my girlfriend, who I honestly don't really deserve at this point, because there have been days and situations that have occurred that the things that I've said and the stuff that has happened, any other person out there would have quit ages ago. So I am very grateful, and I thank her so much. She is aware, of course, that I make this podcast, but she doesn't listen. Not because she doesn't want to, it's just because she doesn't really have time, unfortunately. So, yeah, I'm so happy that she's in my life, because I don't know what I would have done if I had met someone who had no patience and no understanding. And, well, she does understand this, so I am definitely grateful for that. And there's not much else you can really say about that. And that is another episode of Living with ADHD and CPTSD. Well, I hope you enjoyed this particular episode. If you have any comments or questions, or maybe a suggestion for my podcast, there are a number of ways to get hold of me. First, you can email me. It's livingwithadhdandcptsd@gmail.com. You can contact me on Twitter. My handle is @ADHDandCPTSD. You can also get a hold of me on Mastodon, which is a new social media website that is kind of taking over a little bit for Twitter. If you look up Living with ADHD and CPTSD at mastodon.world, then you can find me there, you can follow me, and you can give me a shout and let me know what you think. You can also go to my website. It's www.livingwithadhdandcptsd.ca. And you can also check out my YouTube page. It's at Living with ADHD and CPTSD. If you would like to donate to help my cause for my podcast, you can go to ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com/Living with ADHD and CPTSD. You can also go to my Patreon page, Living with ADHD and CPTSD, and become a member, where you get special access to all early episodes, plus merchandise. You can purchase merchandise to support this podcast. So, go to Patreon. All right, everybody. That's it for today. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.